The moment I walked into the Wing Commander's office at Naval Air Station Oceana and saw the same man from the coffee shop sitting in the leather chair across from Colonel Briggs, my knees almost gave out. He was wearing service dress blues, 4 silver stars on each shoulder, the same kind eyes that had thanked me 2 weeks earlier when I slid that crumpled 20 across the counter at Hadley's, the same gentle nod. But everything else about him was different now. He was not a tired old man hunched over a cup of black coffee that he could not pay for. He was Admiral Whitcomb Brennan, and I was Petty Officer Second Class Murren Halsey, and I had no idea what I'd walked into. I should back up. It was a Tuesday in late February, the kind of cold grey afternoon where the wind off the Chesapeake cuts through whatever you were wearing, no matter how many layers you piled on. I had gotten off shift at the maintenance hangar around 4, and instead of driving straight back to the apartment I shared with 2 other female sailors in Virginia Beach, I stopped at Hadley's because I had a headache and because Hadley's makes the only coffee in a 30-mile radius that does not taste like burnt tire. The place is small. 12 tables, a counter with 8 stools, the kind of diner where the menus are laminated and the booths are upholstered in red vinyl that has been patched with duct tape in 3 places. My grandmother would have called it a real diner. I just called it home. I had been coming there since I got stationed at Oceana 18 months earlier. The owner was a woman named Roselle Hadley, mid-60s, grey hair always pulled back in a practical knot, hands like sandpaper from 40 years of dishwashing. She knew my order without me saying a word. Black coffee, 2 slices of rye toast, and a small bowl of grits with butter only, no sugar. She would set it down without asking and refill the coffee twice before I had to flag her down. That was the kind of place it was. I had taken my usual stall at the counter and was halfway through my first cup when the bell over the door jingled and an older man walked in. I noticed him the way you notice anyone in a small space. He was maybe 70, give or take, tall but a little stooped, wearing a faded brown canvas jacket with a frayed collar and a baseball cap that said USS Constellation in white letters across the front. The hat was old. The brim was bent in that particular way that hats get when somebody has worn them every day for 15 years. He had a clean shave, but his hair underneath the cap was white and a little wispy, and his boots, I remember the boots, his boots were polished, not new, but polished, the kind of polish that takes 10 minutes and tells you something about a man. He sat 2 stools down from me at the counter. Roselle came over and he asked, very quietly, if he could just get a coffee and a piece of toast. She smiled and said of course, and she poured him a cup right there. I went back to my own plate. I was scrolling through my phone, half reading some article about something I cannot even remember now, when I heard her say, "Sir, I am so sorry, but it says declined." I looked up. The old man was holding out a credit card, and Roselle was holding the little card reader, and there was that awful pause where everybody in the diner suddenly had to pretend they were not listening. He took the card back and looked at it like he had never seen it before. Then he tried again. He reached into his wallet, a brown leather wallet that had seen better decades, and pulled out another card. She ran it. She shook her head very kindly and said, "That one is not working either, sir. I am sorry." His ears went red. I cannot tell you exactly what it was that made me act. I have a temper about certain things and not others, and watching an old man in a navy hat get embarrassed about a $4 cup of coffee is one of them. My grandfather flew helicopters in Vietnam. He came home and worked at a feed store for the rest of his life and never asked anyone for anything. He died with $67 in his checking account and a closet full of medals he never showed us. I did not think about any of that consciously in that moment. I just reached into my back pocket and pulled out a 20 and slid it across the counter to Roselle. I said, "His is on me." "Mine too." She looked at me and her eyes did that thing where they get a little shiny, but she nods because she has been a waitress for 40 years, and she knows when not to make a fuss. The old man started to turn toward me, and I just knew, that if I let him say thank you, I was going to start crying in a public diner in Virginia Beach. So I stood up, grabbed my jacket, said keep the change to Roselle, and walked out the door without looking back. I heard him say, "Wait, miss," but the bell jingled and the cold air hit me and I got into my Corolla and pulled out of the lot before he could come outside. I told myself I would forget about it by the time I got home. I did not. I thought about him that night when I was eating ramen on my couch. I thought about him the next morning when I was driving to base. I thought about him when I was lying under an F-18 with my forearms greasy up to the elbow trying to replace a hydraulic fitting that did not want to be replaced. I kept seeing his ears go red. There is something specific about an old man being embarrassed that gets under my skin and stays there. Pride is a strange thing. The men who built this country, the ones who fought in jungles and on aircraft carriers and in places we do not even have names for, they have this particular pride. They do not ask, they do not complain. They sit at a counter and they try a second card. By Friday, I had mostly stopped thinking about him. By the next week, I had stopped completely. I should mention what was happening at work because it matters. My division officer at the time was a man named Lieutenant Commander Wesley Tarkington. I will say his name once, and then I will just call him my division officer, because that is how I think about him. Like a category of weather rather than a person. He had been in command of our division for about 6 months when this happened, transferred in from somewhere on the west coast. He was tall and pale, and he had the kind of moustache that men grow when they want you to take them more seriously than you would naturally take them. He had decided within about a week of arriving that he did not care for me. I have thought a lot about why. I think it was a few things. I think he did not like that I was a woman who was good at her job. I think he did not like that the senior enlisted in our division respected me. I think he did not like that I was up for promotion to first class, and he could not find a reason to stop it, and that made him itch. So he made my life small. He could not write me up. I did not give him reasons. But he could give me the worst shifts. He could question every inspection I signed off on, twice in front of other people. He could find reasons to send me back to do the same paperwork 3 times. He could make a comment, just one, in front of the chief, about how some sailors lacked the focus required for the next rank. He never said my name. He did not have to. The chief would look at the floor. The other sailors would look at me. I would smile because that is what you do, and I would go back to work. It is hard to describe what that kind of thing does to a person over time. It is not dramatic. It is not loud. It is a slow leak. You start sleeping worse. You start dreading the drive to base. You start counting the months until your transfer, or his transfer, or his transfer, or somebody's transfer. I had 8 months left on my orders at Oceana. I was counting them down like a prisoner. The Monday 2 weeks after the diner, I came in to find a yellow sticky note on my locker that said, "See Divo before muster." I took a breath. I went to his office. He did not look up from his computer when I came in. He let me stand there for about 90 seconds, which is a long time when nobody is talking, and then he slid a folder across the desk and told me I was being formally counselled for a maintenance discrepancy on an aircraft I had not even worked on. I tried to explain. I had the paperwork. I had not been the signing technician on that bird. The squawk was dated 2 weeks before the day in question, and I had been on leave that week for my sister's wedding in Tennessee. I told him this calmly. I had the leave papers in my locker. He told me he would consider that information and that I was dismissed. He did not dismiss it. By Wednesday the counselling was in my service record. By Thursday I had been told, very casually, that my promotion package had been pulled from consideration pending review. I drove home Thursday night and I sat in my car in the parking lot of my apartment building for 40 minutes. I did not cry. I did not call anyone. I just sat there and tried to figure out how a person fights something like this when the person doing it controls every piece of paper that documents your existence. Friday morning, I got a call at my locker, on the squadron phone, from the wing commander's executive assistant, a chief named Petty Officer Aguilar. She said in that very neutral tone they use, "Petty Officer Halsey, the wing commander, would like to see you in his office at 1400 hours. She did not say why, I asked. She said that information was not provided to me. I spent the next 5 hours trying to figure out what I had done. I went through every aircraft I had touched in the last 6 months. I went through every piece of paperwork I had signed. I thought maybe my division officer had taken his campaign up a level. I thought maybe I was about to lose everything. I am 31 years old. I have been in the Navy for 11 years. I have a brother who looks up to me. I have a mother who tells her bridge club that her daughter works on jet airplanes. I had built my entire adult life on this uniform, and I was about to walk into a room where a man I had never met was going to decide whether I got to keep it. At 13:55, I was standing in the hallway outside the wing commander's office in my service dress, hat under my arm, palms damp. Aguilar walked me in. Colonel Briggs was behind his desk, but he was not the man my eye went to. The man in the leather chair across from him stood up when I came in, which itself was strange because flag officers do not stand for petty officers. He turned toward me, and every drop of blood in my body left my face. It was him. The hat was gone. The frayed canvas jacket was gone. His white hair was combed and a little shorter than I remembered. He was wearing service dress blues with 4 silver stars on each shoulder, and so many rows of ribbons across his chest that I could not even take them all in. But it was his face. Those same kind eyes, and he was looking at me with the same expression he had been about to give me in the diner before I walked out the door. I came to attention so hard I think I may have actually stopped breathing. Colonel Briggs cleared his throat and said, "Petty Officer Halsey, this is Admiral Brennan. The Admiral is the commander of Naval Air Forces Atlantic. He has asked to speak with you." I said, "Sir, just that." My voice came out smaller than I wanted. The Admiral smiled. A real smile. He said, "At ease, sailor." I tried. He said, "Do you remember me?" I said, "Yes, sir." "I do." He said, "I have been trying to find you for 2 weeks. There's a particular kind of silence that fills a room when you realize you've completely misunderstood a situation. I had walked in expecting to be relieved of duty. I was standing in front of a 4-star admiral who'd been looking for me. I did not know what to do with my hands. I did not know what to do with my face. He told me to sit down. I sat down. Colonel Briggs sat too. The Admiral did not sit. He stood by the window with his hands clasped behind his back, and he looked out at the airfield for a moment. And then he told me a story. He told me that the previous Saturday, 2 weeks ago now, he had been driving back from a funeral in Norfolk. An old friend of his from flight school had died, and he had stayed afterward to spend time with the widow, who was not doing well. He had driven himself in his own car because he wanted to. He was wearing his oldest jacket because he had been helping his friend's son load boxes into a truck that morning. He stopped at Hadley's because he had been going to Hadley's since he was a lieutenant junior grade stationed at Oceana in 1979. Roselle's mother had run the place back then. Roselle had been a teenager waiting tables. He had not realized until he sat down at the counter that he had left his regular wallet at his friend's house. The one he had in his pocket was an old one, with 2 cards in it that he had been meaning to cancel for months. One had expired, the other had been frozen by his bank because of a fraud alert from a charge in Singapore that he had not made. He had no cash. He had not carried cash in years. He said, "I was about to tell Roselle I would come back and pay her tomorrow. She would have let me. She knew me. But I was embarrassed. Anyone would be. And before I could say anything, a young woman in a navy sweatshirt slid a 20 across the counter, told Roselle to keep the change, and walked out the door before I could say a word. I called after her. She did not turn around. Roselle told me she came in every week, but Roselle did not know her name. She knew her order. She knew her shift schedule, roughly. She did not know her name." He turned away from the window and looked at me. He said, "I have been trying to find you ever since. I went back to Hadley's 3 times. I asked at the base. I described the sweatshirt. The one you were wearing said Oceana on the back. I knew you were one of mine. I just did not know which one. I want to tell you that I said something dignified. I did not. I said, 'Surfy, you did not have to do all that.' It was $4. He said, 'Petty Officer Halsey.' It was not $4. I did not have an answer for that. He said, 'Sit there for a minute. I want to tell you something.' He told me that when he was a young ensign, fresh out of Annapolis, he had been at a gas station in Pensacola one night with no money in his wallet and a busted ATM card and a tank that was running on fumes. A woman, just a stranger, An older black woman in a nurse's uniform getting off a shift had paid for $10 of gas for him without asking his name. She had said, "You pay it forward, baby." That was 44 years ago. He had been trying to pay it forward ever since. He said, "Every time I think I have caught up, somebody like you comes along and shows me I am still in debt." I did not cry. I want to make that very clear. I came close. I had to look at the corner of the desk for about 10 seconds. Then he sat down. He looked at Colonel Briggs. He said, "Frank, would you give us the room for a minute?" Colonel Briggs got up and walked out and closed the door behind him. The Admiral leaned forward in his chair. He said, "Now, I have been the commander of this force for 2 years. In 2 years, I have learned that the things that matter on a base do not usually walk into my office. They get sorted out, or they do not, 3 levels below me, and I never hear about them. So when I tell you what I am about to tell you, I want you to understand that this is not how things normally go." He said, "I asked Colonel Briggs about you before you came in. Your record, your evaluations, your reputation in your division. He told me you were one of the best second-class petty officers in the wing. He also told me your promotion package was pulled this week for a counselling that, on review, appears to be based on a clerical error that should have been caught the first time it was challenged." My face must have done something because he held up a hand. He said, "I have not done anything yet. I am not going to do anything based on what I think I see. I am going to ask Colonel Briggs to take a careful look at what happened. He is going to do that because he is good at his job, not because I am leaning on him. I want you to understand the difference. I am not in the business of fixing things for the people who are kind to me. I am in the business of making sure my Navy works the way it is supposed to work, and that means when something looks crooked, somebody who is not the crooked person takes a look at it." I said, "Yes, sir." He said, "I am telling you this because I want you to know that what you did at Hadley's did not buy you anything in this office. Do you understand me? You did a small kindness for a stranger. The Navy is not going to thank you for that by handing you a promotion. The Navy is going to thank you by being the kind of organisation where what you do and what you do not do gets weighed honestly. That is what I owe you. That is what I owe every sailor under my command. If your record is what your captain says it is, your promotion will come. If your counselling is what it appears to be, it will be removed. None of that is because of me. All of it is because that is how it is supposed to work." I said, "Yes, sir. Thank you, sir." He smiled. He said, "You have not stopped saying sir since you walked in." "At ease, petty officer." I tried again. He said, "One more thing." He reached into the inside pocket of his service dress coat and pulled out a folded $20 bill. He set it on the edge of the desk in front of me. He said, "I owe you this. I would have paid you back 2 weeks ago if you had let me." I did not pick it up. I said, "Sir, with respect, I cannot take that. That is not why I did it." He said, "I know that is not why you did it. That is exactly why you have to take it. Because the next time somebody at a counter has 2 cards that do not work, you are going to be the person who has cash in her wallet to help them. That is how the chain stays unbroken." The woman in Pensacola did not let me thank her either. She told me to pay it forward. So I am telling you, take the 20. Spend it on the next person. I picked it up. I folded it into my breast pocket. I said, "Yes, sir." He stood. I stood. He shook my hand. His hand was warm and dry, and his grip was firm in that particular way of men who have shaken a lot of hands and never made any of them into a performance. He said, "Dismissed, petty officer." I said, "Aye, aye, sir." I walked out of that office and past Aguilar and into the hallway, and I did not let myself feel anything until I got to my car. Then I sat in the front seat and I put my forehead on the steering wheel, and I shook for a while. Not crying exactly, just shaking the way your body does when it has been bracing for a hit and the hit never came. I want to tell you what happened next, because I think the small things matter more than the big ones. The counselling came off my record 3 weeks later. Colonel Briggs called me into his office and told me himself. He did not mention the Admiral. He did not have to. He said the maintenance discrepancy had been investigated and found to be a paperwork error in the squadron's tracking system, and the counselling had been issued in error, and on behalf of the wing he apologised for the inconvenience. He said it like a man reading a script he had written himself, which is to say, with a certain steel behind the politeness. My division officer did not look at me for the rest of the time we served together. He got orders to a staff job in Norfolk that summer. I do not know if those orders came when they would have come anyway. I do not know if the Admiral had anything to do with it. I have chosen on purpose not to find out. The Admiral was right. I did not want to be the kind of person who got things fixed because she had been kind to a stranger. I wanted to be the kind of person who was kind to a stranger because that was who I was. I made first class 4 months later. The package went through clean. I have thought a lot in the years since about what it means to do something small when nobody is watching. I am not religious in any organised way, but my grandmother used to say that the good Lord keeps no books because he does not need to. Things come around. Not always, not on a schedule, but often enough that you should not be surprised when they do. I go back to Hadley's almost every week. Rosella's still there, though her knees give her trouble now, and she sits down between rushes. I have never told her who that old man was. I do not think it is my story to tell. She knows he was somebody. She has known him for 40 years. She does not need me to put a rank on him. I keep a folded 20 in the back of my wallet at all times. It is not the same 20 he gave me. I spent that one on a cup of coffee and a bowl of soup for a man with a duffel bag at a bus station in Richmond 6 months later. He did not look at me twice. He just nodded and ate his soup. That was the whole transaction. I keep a new 20 in there now, and when I spend it, I put another one in. I have spent that 20 more times than I can count. I am not telling you this to brag. I am telling you because I want you to know that the chain is real. The woman in Pensacola in 1980, the Admiral in 2024, me in a diner outside Oceana, a man with a duffel bag in Richmond. Whoever comes after him. The chain does not care about ranks or stars or stripes. It just cares that you keep handing it forward. I sat in Hadley's last Tuesday on my usual stool, drinking my black coffee and eating my rye toast and my grits with butter only, no sugar. The bell over the door jingled, and a young man in an army uniform came in. He was maybe 22. He looked tired. He sat down 2 stools away and ordered a coffee and a piece of pie. And when Rosal brought him the cheque, he looked at his phone for a long moment, with that particular expression I now recognise, and then he reached into his wallet. I did not let him finish. I slid a 20 across the counter. I said, "His is on me, mine too, keep the change." He started to say something. I stood up, got my jacket, and walked out before he could. The cold air hit me. I got in my car. I sat for a moment with my hands on the steering wheel, and I thought about an old man in a frayed canvas jacket and a baseball cap that said USS Constellation, and I thought about a 4-star admiral standing at a window, looking out at an airfield, and I thought about a nurse in Pensacola in 1980 telling a young ensign to pay it forward, baby, and I smiled, and I drove home. The Navy teaches you a lot of things. It teaches you how to fix airplanes. It teaches you how to follow orders. It teaches you how to fold a uniform and how to take one apart. But the most important thing it ever taught me, it did not teach me in a classroom or on a flight line. It taught me at a counter at Hadley's on a Tuesday afternoon, when an old man let me hand him back a little of his dignity, and then waited 2 weeks to hand me back mine. That is the whole story. That is everything I have to give you. If you take one thing from it, take this. The next time you are at a counter and the card does not work, do not look away. Do not pretend you do not see it. Slide the bill across, tell them to keep the change, walk out before they can thank you. You will not know who they are. You do not need to. The chain does not care, and neither should you. Just keep it moving. I have turned that Tuesday afternoon over in my head 1,000 times in the years since. And the thing that strikes me hardest is not the 4 stars on Admiral Brennan's shoulders. It is how close I came to walking past that counter without looking up. I had a headache. I was tired. I was thinking about my own problems. If I'd stayed buried in my phone for 10 more seconds, I would have missed the whole thing. None of what came after would have happened. Not the office, not the cleared record, not the chain I have been keeping unbroken ever since. That is what I think about. The almost. I have come to believe that the small choices we make when we are tired and distracted are the ones that actually build a life. The big moments take care of themselves. You know they are big. You rise to them, or you do not. But the small ones, the $4 coffees, the moment when you decide whether to put your phone down or not, those are the ones nobody writes down and nobody grades you on. And those are the ones that turn out to matter most. The kind of person I was at that counter was the kind of person I had been practicing being for 31 years without realizing it. My grandfather in Vietnam, my mother who fed strangers at our kitchen table when I was a kid, the 1,000 small lessons I did not know I was learning. They were all in my pocket when I reached for that 20. I think about Lieutenant Commander Tarkington too, sometimes. I do not hate him anymore. I do not think about him with anger. I think about him with something closer to sadness, because somewhere along the way he learned to make himself feel bigger by making other people feel smaller. And that is a hard way to live. The Admiral did not punish him directly. He let the truth do its own work, which is the patient kind of justice, and the only kind that actually changes anything. That taught me something too. You do not have to swing back at every person who tries to make you small. You just have to keep being the kind of person who can be trusted with the truth. Character is built quietly. Strength is built quietly. The mind that sees clearly is built quietly. None of it announces itself. You wake up one morning and find you have been carrying it for years, and you only notice because somebody is testing it. I keep a folded 20 in the back of my wallet. I have spent it more times than I can count. Every time I spend it, I put another one in. That is not superstition. That is a promise I made to myself in a parking lot outside Hadley's, and I have kept it because keeping it has made me a person I can live with. The chain is older than me. The nurse in Pensacola passed it to a young ensign. The ensign passed it to me. I pass it to whoever needs it next. None of us know where it ends. None of us are supposed to. Just keep it moving. That is the whole lesson. Just keep it moving.